Hi, I'm Dr. Marie Hadley, and in this video I'll be talking to you about how to excel in short answer questions in law. And in the context of this video, I'll be reflecting upon some of my recent experiences marking short answer questions in my intellectual property law subject. So, while marking my cohort's responses to this particular IP law assessment, which was 3 short answer questions, the overwhelming issue that students faced was that they were not adequately responding to the question. So they were either answering the first part of the question and not the second part of the question. Alternatively, they were answering or interpreting the question more broadly than what I'd actually asked them to do. So for example, they were applying it to a broader area of law when I'd asked them to only consider one concept. Or alternatively, they just weren't following instructions. I, for example, in my final question, asked them to put forward one reform proposal. Some students put forward multiple. So my first tip when thinking about how to start to respond to a short answer assignment questions in law is to slow down, read the question, and consider what it is it's actually asking you to do. And once you have a bit more of a confined idea about what the question's asking, you can then put forward that super targeted response to the question. Now, in my assignment, I had one question where I asked students to draw upon the course materials, and then in the other 2 questions, I asked them to draw upon research. Now, in terms of the question where I asked them to draw upon course materials in their response, the primary issue around this that students exhibited was that they were summarizing that particular course materials or summarizing the key arguments in a particular journal article. Now, the question was not asking them to do something descriptive with that source. The question was asking them to analyze the source when putting forward their response to the question. And so what you had then is students kind of writing in the realm of what the question was asking them to do, but they A, weren't directly answering the question, and B, weren't exhibiting the level of critical analysis they needed to do well in the question. Their point of view was simply too far in the background. So, once again, this comes down to reading that question closely and thinking through what it's asking you to do. Is it analysis it's asking you to put forward? Is it an argument? Or is it description and outlining a commentator's point of view? So pay attention to those keywords so that you do what it is you need to do with the sources that you need to rely upon. Another thing I noticed when marking these particular papers was that sharply focused responses did much better. Now, short answer questions, you are extremely limited on words, so you don't want to be wasting words. And going too broad can actually limit you in this respect. So as long as you're answering the question, I would say try and put forward the most narrow, targeted response to the question that you can, because then it allows you to get that additional depth and get that additional detail in, as opposed to, for example, in my instance, trying to tell me as the marker everything you know about copyright law, which didn't really go to the crux of the question being asked. So be as targeted as you can. Now, in terms of targeting your response to the question, I think although it's not an essay, a short answer question still requires thought like an essay does. So you still need to deliberately construct your paragraphs and ideas. You still need to pay attention to structure, even if you're only writing 300 words or 400 words or 500 words. So maybe by thinking about it as an essay, in the sense it's something that needs to all further your position on the question or your content, I think thinking about it in that way can help you make those more strategic decisions about what to include versus what to exclude from your response. Now, we're obviously in the discipline of law, so it's, I guess, useful that I also have a law comment in here too. My students' responses to the question, as mentioned, tended towards being a little bit too broad, a little bit too unfocused, etc. And part of that picture, or part of the problem with the responses, or the key weakness of the responses, was the fact that the legal discussion was also too broad. So I think you really do need to pin down the law that is most relevant to the question, and that is also most relevant to your position or your response to the question. So if this particular case that you're talking about doesn't further your argument or isn't directly on point, summarizing the facts of it isn't going to help you. Okay, so be super strategic with the law that you're linking your response to, as well as the arguments and analysis you use in your actual response. And just one final tip from me. Some of the best responses that I read to my short answer question assignment directly disagreed with the position in the question. So for example, we had a question around whether copyright law constrains creativity. And the people that disagreed tended to have the more thought out responses and targeted responses. So I guess the lesson to draw from this is that it's okay to disagree with the question, just like it's okay to agree with the question, but you still need to systematically establish your position within this short word count that you have. Hopefully those tips and tricks and discussion of the limitations of the papers I recently marked help you when thinking about and planning your responses to your next short answer question law task. Thank you. If you found this video helpful, please click subscribe and I'll see you next time.